Welcome to Textural Anthologies, the podcast series that explores the personal and professional side of creative individuals. My name is Massimo Casagrande, and in this series, I'll be continuing my informal conversations with friends, colleagues, and fellow creatives to discover more about their stories, their journey, what makes them tick, and above all, their creative outlets. Today's creative boundaries are blurred more than ever, and through these interviews, we will explore how creativity is influenced and inspired by other disciplines, and how through developments in technology, social media, and new business strategies, the creative industry is continuously evolving. Enjoy the episode. Today's guest is a South African designer who launched his brand Uni-Form in 2019. Drawing references from its location in Johannesburg and translating them into ultra-contemporary silhouettes, Uni-Form is a modular, slow fashion collection of trans-seasonal classics. Uni-Form has just been awarded the inaugural Fondation Azzedine Alaïa and Orveda Award, a partnership of purpose and love to support the next generation of fashion talent. Join me today as we discuss more about how he created his brand, on forming a community, South African fashion, and emotional tailoring. I'm really happy to welcome today's guest, Luke Radloff. Luke, how are you? Thank you so much for joining us today, and glad to have you as a guest.
I'm very well, thanks, Massimo. Thanks for having me.
First of all, congratulations on winning the Fondation Alaïa and Orveda Award and Residency Platform. That's really exciting. But before we talk about this, it would be great if you could just share a bit more about yourself. Tell us about Uni-Form, which you started in 2019. And it actually started as a slow fashion collection of trans-seasonal classics. How did Uni-Form start?
I'm Luke Radloff. I'm the founder and creative director of Uni-Form by Luke Radloff. We are based in Johannesburg, South Africa. And as you correctly said, we began the business in 2019. The brand Uni-Form is really an ode to the city of Johannesburg, my love letter to the real street style of Johannesburg. And also it's a way for me to express the kind of conditions that we work in and how we live here to the rest of the world. The way that I do that is through something that I call emotional tailoring. And that's a take on traditional tailoring, but it's our take and our point of view put forth through clothing and tailoring. And emotional tailoring refers to the emotional toll that it actually takes for us to create luxury garments from where we are in the world and the conditions that we face.
I grew up in South Africa as well, Johannesburg as well. So it's nice to see somebody else from Johannesburg expressing fashion, talking about fashion. But I completely understand the other emotional toll, sort of like load shedding and maybe other restrictions that are in South Africa compared to more international markets, especially for the fashion industry. It's a huge struggle, but I think there's a uniqueness to South Africa. There's sort of this tenacity of South Africans to sort of push forward, to go ahead and like really create something innovative and nice. Where in Johannesburg are you based exactly? Which part?
So we're based in Ilovo, Johannesburg. The studio is currently based in my apartment, which is where I have seen clients for the past few years. Obviously, we started the brand in 2019 and we kind of prepared to kind of move forth and do things, the way you would. But obviously in 2020, the pandemic hit and we had all the lockdowns and kind of a period of at least a year to 2 years, where it was really precarious.
But did that, this curveball, which was COVID, did that sort of make you rethink your business model? Because obviously you had just started taking off, and then suddenly we had to stop for 2-3 years. So did that make you rethink or maybe approach designing and creating in a different way?
It definitely did for a while. I think everybody kind of took a step back, no matter fashion or whatever industry, but definitely in fashion, everyone took a step back and thought, okay, it was more from a point of view of how can we be of service at this time? it was less of how can I save this business and more how can we be of service. So we definitely, we registered ourselves on the database, the government database, as suppliers, and we began sort of starting to manufacture protective gear, focusing on masks, because at that time that was the concern, that there weren't going to be enough masks. So we did produce some fabric masks. So we did do that for a while, and I'm glad that we did our part in terms of being of service during that time. And then obviously we still have our business running costs. So we had to also think about keeping the business going. And we did a few things that maybe weren't necessarily on our roadmap or in our plan to kind of sustain it. And I'm just really thankful that we got through it and that we're still here today. I mean, a lot of designers didn't get through that period, especially coming from South Africa, didn't make it through that. So I'm just really grateful that, we all stuck to, I don't want to say a plan, because I've never really worked like that. I've never really had a plan. Our community just grew stronger throughout that time, and we're here today, so I'm just grateful.
I think one thing that emerged a lot during the pandemic is the sense of community, of people sort of joining forces, really working together. There was like sort of one ambition, one goal is for all of us to be able to survive within our respective industries. So I think it's like a positive thing that we can take from the pandemic, this unity amongst ourselves. So you studied fashion design in South Africa, and who was like a mentor, somebody that maybe guided you and gave you the courage to actually embark on creating your own label?
So yes, I studied fashion in Johannesburg. At the time, it was an institution called Lysof.
Okay, yes.
I believe it's now called Stadio. I think it's still one of the main institutions that is kind of gearing designers for the industry locally.
Quite a few of the South African brands I work with actually all studied at Lysa, now Stadio.
I think also Tebe Magugu went to Stadio. That was a great sort of foundation. And at the time when I attended Lysof, it was run by the founder, Shana. She was still actually teaching classes at the time. I don't know if she still does. I don't know how involved she still is. I'm not sure. But she was very involved at the time that I was there, and she taught us design prac. She took us for that course, and that was very influential on me. She taught us how to design from a very emotional place. And the school was much more focused on the designer at that time rather than now, where it's kind of everyone in the process. So photographers, makeup artists, and that kind of thing, which is great. But also when I was there, I'm really fortunate to say that I got that kind of one-on-one time with the founder, Shana, who taught me a lot.
That makes a huge difference, doesn't it? It's like this mentorship. So having the person focusing on you, it means a lot.
Exactly. That was very influential for me. And so I went on to actually be given bursaries to help me because, the tuition was quite difficult for me to afford. And because I kind of excelled, they gave me bursaries. And then at the end of my studies, after the third year, I was awarded the best collection at our graduating fashion show.
Oh, nice.
And it was there that I'm trying to think of the right word. I don't want to say discovered, because that sounds a bit bizarre to me, but that's where I met Jacques van der Walt of Black Coffee, and okay. Jacques van der and Danit Zalepin at the time, who was working with Jacques. They actually hired me on the spot that day.
Oh, wow.
After the show, they came to me and they said, will you work with us? I was kind of blown away because Jacques and what they were doing at Black Coffee, in South Africa at the time, that was really revolutionary. And Jacques was always a hero of mine. That offer to work with them was life-changing for me. And then I worked with Black Coffee for a few years in South Africa. And I have to say that's where I probably picked up most of my pattern making, my love of pattern making, of flat pattern making and construction and architecture and using architecture on the body.
I know Black Coffee. I love seeing their collections. And like you're saying, it's like there's an architecture to their garments. There's a study behind. And I think today in this digital world where everything's about technology and innovation. Don't get me wrong, I absolutely love it. But I think the craftsmanship, traditional pattern cutting, actually sitting there, cutting the paper, drafting. And, I want to go back to the word that you've used quite a while, emotional, no? There's this connection when you're drafting something physically using your hands, a set square ruler, everything, then doing something digitally. There's this connection, there's this human touch that goes into it, which I think is missing maybe from all the technology around us.
Totally agree. Like you, I'm very thankful and fascinated for the technologies that we do have. But then on the flip side of that, I'm also really thankful to come from a generation that kind of experienced both worlds. I think we were the last generation to experience both. So to experience life with none of the useful technologies.
Exactly. We like the cusp generation. We still know what a vinyl is, but we also know like podcasts and all that other stuff. It's quite bizarre sometimes.
Thinking about that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's insane. It feels like ages ago, but it wasn't.
Exactly.
So you graduated from college. You immediately got an internship with Black Coffee. 2019, you set up your own company, your brand Uni-Form. Is that what you did? Did you leave Black Coffee to create Uni-Form, or was there something else in between?
Okay, that's a very interesting one. For those few years working in the industry in South Africa, at that time, I was constantly told, not only by South Africans, but, these are the messages that we were told by the fashion industry, was that if you were not in a major fashion capital like Paris or Milan or New York, that you would never really make it with a proper career in fashion. After being told that for so long, and then especially in South Africa, so many South Africans saying, if you want to make it, you have to go overseas, as we say. So I did do that for a period of time, and I moved to London. I mainly worked in retail, and that's where I tried to sort of get my fashion career going on an international level, but it wasn't working for me. It didn't work for me. But the more profound thing that happened was that when I returned to South Africa, I really realized how much I appreciate home. And this is where home is. All the opportunities that lay here and how people in South Africa are so supportive. And it's only once I returned to South Africa that I started to realize my career could actually have way more potential here than anywhere else. So it was really the opposite of the advice I'd been given and all the messages that were put out. It was really home where I was going to thrive and where I was going to be able to actually have a platform for my work. I did return home and I started to lean into where I'm from more and more and realize that that is a powerful thing, and to celebrate where you're from and to use that in your work and to use that in your messaging has actually been the most rewarding thing for my work.
That is really nice. You came back and you appreciated it more. You appreciated the history. I'm really loving to see that South Africa is becoming more and more prominent within the fashion industry. Tailor winning the LVMH. We're noticing more and more. And I think, I keep saying like, finally, because there's so much talent there that's undiscovered that people, when I saw that Sarah had posted that you had won the Azzedine Alaïa and Orvieto Prize, I was like, oh my God, it's so great. It's nice to see more South Africans becoming known for the fashion industry.
It is really a beautiful thing. And another really beautiful thing is the way that South Africans rally behind other South Africans who are being recognized globally, and the support from other South Africans is actually unlike anything I've ever experienced before. And maybe up until being awarded this prize, I hadn't really felt that and how powerful that is. And so after winning the prize recently and having all the feedback and all the support of South Africans who are so happy for this, happy for me to have this prize and to represent South Africa, it's just such a beautiful experience.
No, it's really nice. It's going back to what we said sort of at the beginning as well. There's this sort of community, it's joining forces. There's no sort of individualism. And I think that's really, really nice. You all support each other. Like you say, you all rally around each other. And it's like one for all for one, which is really, really nice. What do you think makes South African fashion unique? Like, why do you think suddenly over the past 4 or 5 years, like the world is suddenly noticing more South African fashion design?
Well, I think that's not just specific to South Africa. I think the
Africa,
world, as we call it, which is just, a very small part of the world, is actually just very slowly waking up to the fact that there's an entire world and everyone has a voice. And I think specifically with South Africa, we have so many voices and so many individual voices and unique voices that haven't been heard for so long or were never given an opportunity to be heard. So I think now that we are at that point where we have these opportunities, I think people are finally, able to take in the stories, and they really love the beautiful stories that come from South Africa. And there was something that I'd said at the foundation during the dinner that they held to announce the project to the press. I had referenced the Cradle of Humankind, which is a geological site not that far from Johannesburg, which is home to some of the world's oldest fossils and human remains. And basically, South Africa is exactly that. It's the cradle of humankind. This is the oldest place on earth. We've had stories to tell since the dawn of time, basically. As I said at the foundation, because it's the oldest place on earth, it's also had more struggles than any other place on earth. It's had more good times and more struggles. So we've had to literally struggle longer than any other site in the world because it is the oldest place on earth. So I just think that through everything we've been through, the amount of beautiful stories that we have to tell and the amount of resilience and hope that we have after all of it, that leaves for very powerful storytelling.
Absolutely. They call South Africa the Rainbow Nation as well, because you have all this diversity, but everybody's it becomes one, and definitely the struggles. But I think South Africa is also, I remember being there for the elections in 94, and the whole world was expecting, to be lots of chaos or whatever. But I think we proved that we were in this together. We wanted it to work. And I think we really surprised the world to show them that the elections went by without any chaos or any trouble. And ever since then, we've really been working together to really make South Africa a great country. Like you say, it's a resilience. We've been through hard times.
And I think that's why I reference emotional tailoring in my work so often, is because we have been through so many profound moments like the elections in 94, like you said, that was so emotional. And we've been through so many more moments after that it's just impossible not to have all of that woven into our stories.
Let's talk about the Alaïa experience now. How did that come about?
Okay, so what I really love about this whole experience, not only that I'm the first person to be awarded this prize, which is such an honor, but what I love the most is that I never had to fill out any entry form. This was not a competition. And for me, that's a really beautiful thing, because I think sometimes competition and having to try and display yourself in a group of other people where you're competing, it becomes something else. And I think it can take a toll on people. And I have avoided entering competitions for a very long time. I've had a lot of pressure from people to enter the competitions. And of course, competitions hold such, prestigious prizes and prize money that can be life-changing for designers. But whenever I have in the past done one of these entry forms for a competition, it's really never sit well with me. And I've had an instinctual feeling in my chest that I just knew that it was something that my heart was not in. I've never been a competitive person. So that was the most amazing thing for me, is that this was not a competition. Okay. And some people say that I won a competition, but I think I've been awarded a prize as opposed to winning a competition. And for me, that's the fact that I love most about it. Of course, there were other people that the esteemed panel of judges were looking at and sort of studying their work from afar and deciding. And I think from what I heard, there were maybe 3 of them that were from Africa. And from those 3, I was selected. And then I was given the news that I was selected. I was obviously told and asked if it's something that I wanted to be a part of, which I also think is a really beautiful thing. And I accepted.
Was it intimidating talking to the panel? You had Nicholas Wu, who's the founder and CEO of Orveda. You had Sunabi, the CEO of Coty, Carla Sozzani, and then Sara Sozzani Maino, like talking with them. How was the whole process?
Back to how I was saying that it wasn't a competition, and I was selected upon my work alone, which is really fascinating and quite mind-blowing, really. But, that's what I've been working towards. And that's why I said I didn't enter competitions before. I really want my work to speak for itself. And that's exactly what happened in this case. The work spoke for itself. They selected me based on my work. And that is so important for me. And I never met them once until we were there in Paris announcing this to the press. That's when I met them. Night. I met them that night. And for me, I'm getting goosebumps just saying this because it's actually just such an incredible story for me. But I met them that night. And as soon as I touched down in Paris, I went to Paris, obviously very nervous, not knowing anyone, not having met anyone, and going to the big, fashion capital and with all the preconceived notions of what fashion people are like, which is not good. But as soon as I touched down in Paris and I saw how they treated me and how I was welcomed in, and as soon as I stepped foot into the foundation and I realized this is not a museum, this is a beautiful, beautiful place that feels more like a family than anything else, I was really reassured that this was just going to be a beautiful experience.
No, it's wonderful. They're really nice. And also, I think you met with Olivier at the foundation, right?
Yes, so
he's an amazing person as well.
It's fascinating, and these are all just incredibly talented, smart people. So to be invited into the room with them and at the table with them, and for them to want to hear my story, and a South African story and stories from different parts of the world, they were all there listening to me. So it was really an honor.
So you've been awarded this prize. And if I'm not mistaken, you actually get to access the archives of Alaïa and also to use a studio. So you'll be working for I think for a couple of months, you'll actually be working here in Paris, preparing a collection.
Yeah, so it's a little bit tricky. Given the timing, the collection that I need to present is going to be shown during Paris Couture Fashion Week in January.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's
very soon and just around the corner. And so there's really not a lot of time. When I was in Paris for a few days during the announcement, I was graciously shown around the archive just for about an hour. We just sort of ran around hitting up the different vaults and the different rooms that they've created for Mr. Alaïa's collections. And only to discover in Paris what I feel not many people know is that Mr. Alaïa was actually the biggest collector of contemporary couture in the world. So yes. He has over 20,000 pieces of historical couture that are not from Mr. Alaïa's personal collection, but just from some of the greatest couturiers and designers that the world has ever seen. So I don't know if you've seen at the foundation currently, they have an exhibition dedicated to Mr. Alaïa's work alongside the work of Madame Gray.
Yes.
And it's really incredible. And the best thing to do there, as Olivia also pointed out to me when he guided me through that exhibition, was to play the game of, is it Alaïa or is it Gray? And sometimes you really can't tell. And
you can't, can you? You get it wrong sometimes. No.
Exactly. That's quite a powerful thing, I think.
What is next? You've been awarded this prize. You're working towards creating something for Couture Week. But then what is next for Uni-Form? You mentioned a secret project earlier.
Basically, we're going to be dressing one of our heroes. Oh. One of our heroes has requested to wear uniform. And again, they reached out to us. It wasn't the other way around. So and that's kind of how I've operated the business from the start. It's been very organic. I've never shouted. I'm not that type of person. I'm not a face. So I'm not the face of the brand. For me, the work is the face of the brand. The clothes are the face of the brand. And I've said this before, I sell clothes with clothes. Yeah, so this is just someone who's a hero to so many people. And I'm so excited for that, for when that happens. It's going to be a really special moment, but it's just one of our heroes that has requested to wear uniform, but I can't reveal who it is right now, but
we'll keep checking Instagram, social media, and the press. Until we discover who this hero is. But did the hero come across, God, I sounded a bit like Mariah Carey there, but
not a bad thing.
Did this hero, was it through the award you won, or is it because the hero has been a fan of the brand, has been following you for a while?
No, so these are all things that have just blown my mind. So they reached out to me. Well, they're people, because people have people. So the people reached out to me. And when we had a call, I said to them, this is incredible and amazing, but I have to be in Paris next week as I'm receiving an award. So no, they actually came to me before. They had no idea about the award. So it's all, it's all just really good timing. Well, actually, it's been tough because I've had to now split my time between being in Paris and the studio in Johannesburg. And for this project, I really would have loved to have created something specifically for this person, but I'm hoping we'll be able to do that in the future as well.
I'm sure it's the start of something, no?
Yes, I'm hoping it's just the start of a relationship. But no, they reached out to me and they had no idea about the prize. So it just goes to show the power of storytelling and imagery and really just, social media. But even when I say social media, more specifically, we really focus on our Instagram. So it's really that's kind of propelled us into, people's minds
You talk a lot about you're talking a lot about the team, you're talking a lot about community. Tell us a bit about your team, the Uni-Form team.
Okay, so that's 2 people.
Oh, okay.
That's myself and my tailor. So that's the Uni-Form team. But when I say we, I'm not only talking about myself and my tailor, I'm talking about everyone that's ever worked with me on the brand, all of my collaborators, anyone that's ever expressed an interest, anyone that's ever liked a post, anyone that's ever bought a piece, anyone that's ever worn a piece, anyone that's shown any support to me over the years. That's who I'm including when I say we, because we all did this together. And, up until this point, I've really been focused on South Africa. So those are all South African collaborators.
It's the Uni-Form tribe.
Yeah, the Uni-Form community. The Uni-Form community, for sure. And that community, brands kind of go on about community these days and building their community. And I don't feel like I built this community. I felt like this community built itself around me, and around my work. I just did the work, and, the people who were really meant to be in this community came towards the work. So I really like the way that, we've kind of formed this community.
Very organic.
Exactly.
Again, typical South African thing, no? It's sort of like just coming together and creating something.
Exactly. And also all the kind of people that I really respect and who share the same values that I do and that the brand does, because when you're just authentically putting out your work, it seems to naturally attract the people who have the same kind of values. So for me, that's really beautiful.
One last question. So you mentioned that you were told, if you want to succeed or if you want to be seen, you need to go to Europe. There was the advice that had been given to you, but then you said you discovered that the right place for you is to be home. Now, on the flip side, you've experienced that. What would your advice be to younger designers?
So I think advice is definitely a difficult thing. I don't like giving any advice because everyone has their own individual path. So all I can do is reference what I've done and my path. And So I would say,
and maybe avoid certain mistakes.
Yeah, I think I would stress that authenticity is key.
Absolutely.
And the biggest mistakes that I've made have been when I have not stayed true to who I was. So, or let's not even say mistakes. I don't really think they are mistakes, because I think, anytime we falter, we learn and we grow. So mistakes are not necessarily a bad thing. So that could also be something to tell younger designers, not to feel disheartened or give up when there are challenges or when you have made mistakes, because you only get stronger after that.
Absolutely. Maybe mistakes isn't the correct word. Maybe like a hiccup or a speed bump or something,
Exactly. Yeah. So perhaps when I went overseas thinking that was the correct path for me, that was a hiccup. But I learned so much from it. And if I hadn't done it, I would never have realized that being home was the best for me. So I would just stress that authenticity and staying true to who you are is the most important. But the key to authenticity and staying who you are is figuring out who you are. So you really need to take the time as a young person to figure out who you are so that you can authentically move through the world. And it does take time, and it takes more time for some than others, but you really just need to spend time working on yourself and figuring out who you are, what your values are. Then you can move authentically through the world.
True. Once you figure out, it's sort of everything falls into place, doesn't it? Afterwards, it becomes easier because you have this objective. You're more confident with yourself because you know who you are.
Exactly. I mean, I think it's, life is life, and it's never going to be without challenges, but it definitely less than becoming easier, because I don't think things become easier. I think you're just able to appreciate things more, and you're able to appreciate the good things truly,
Exactly. Yeah, completely. Do you show in South Africa Fashion Week?
Actually, we were speaking about not wanting to be in competitions, but I have been involved in a competition for South African Fashion Week, but that was a very long time ago, in 2007. And my work has changed so much since then. But I was a finalist in a South African Fashion Week competition, and I haven't really shown with South African Fashion Week since then, but I'm a big supporter of all their designers. I know Jacques from Black Coffee shows with them, and he has always been and will always be one of my design and fashion heroes. So, and Lucilla, of course, she's also a supporter of mine. And I'm a big supporter of hers and Fashion Week. And I think the work that they do is so important.
No, it's amazing. It's always nice. It's nice. It's always nice to be there and to participate. And yes, Lucilla is a force to be reckoned with, because, but I think that really encapsulates sort of what South Africa is about, resilience. So, yeah.
Exactly. I don't think you can speak to a South African without that word coming up, or at least a South African entrepreneur, for sure.
Awesome. Luke, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It was so nice to talk to you.
Thank you so much.
And looking forward to seeing the next steps.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for listening to today's episode, and I look forward to inviting you to our next one. So stay tuned, stay safe, and speak soon. Bye.